brainstorm.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Whether you're a full-time resident of the Sunshine State or a part-time one, or maybe just planning a vacation, their website, myfwc.com, has all the info you need on boater safety, hunting and fishing, exploring protected marine and wetlands areas, and hurricane preparedness. To stay safe, go to www.myfwc.com.
All right. And away we go. Episode 3 of Killer Crime. It's season 4 of Killer Means Awesome. That's a lot to sort of break apart, but fun when you do. Dr. Troyer, welcome to episode 3.
Dr. Geller, thank you so much. It's great to be back. We had a little bit of a break, and I know the audiences were getting restless. What kind of housekeeping do we have? Do we need to talk about the places where people listened from?
Well, we can start with that, and I can tell you that we're going to say hello to our friends in Charlotte, North Carolina, Tar Heel State. I don't know if you're a fan of North Carolina.
Well, growing up, no, because in terms of college basketball, I was rooting for the University of Maryland.
Of course.
And back then, it was the classic ACC. It wasn't the new, whatever the, bastardized version is. And players stayed with the team for 4 years. So you really got to, you know what I mean?
But Charlotte, different part of the state, the Hornets, no harm, no foul, right?
Is Charlotte part of the so-called, what's that? What's the triangle? It's like Raleigh, Durham. Right. It sounds like a great place. I need to explore more of North Carolina, especially Western North Carolina. I would love to see. They've got like a repopulation project for red wolves that they're trying to do in that area, which is going well so far, apparently.
Ambitious, yet debatably necessary. All right, but let's also say hello to our good friends in Hot Springs Village, Arkansas. Right in the heartland.
Hot Springs, isn't that right next to where our former president was from?
Is that where President Clinton was from?
There was something, I remember some story from when he was a kid and his mom was a single mom, and something had to do with Hot Springs.
Interesting. I remember like Warm Springs. I associate that with President Roosevelt in Georgia, but I don't know Hot Springs Village in Arkansas.
Yeah, we might have to fact check that, but there's something with when you said Hot Springs, I said this is Arkansas and this is where Clinton used to go.
Interesting. Okay. Now let's go down under and say hello to our friends in Melbourne, Australia. And I'm not going to do an Australian accent.
Yeah, thank you.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it either.
They just played the Open there. They have a tennis Grand Slam championship in Melbourne.
Yeah, who won that?
I don't know. But what I would like to say is that maybe it's one of the players on tour during the,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Could be.
I don't know what the Wi-Fi is like over at the tournament site, for getting podcasts. But
is Melbourne on the other side of Australia? Is it like on the west coast?
To me, they're all on the other side.
Oh, I think Melbourne's down, and then
further down.
Yeah. Okay. Well, welcome. That's pretty exciting. We've got people from Australia listening.
Pretty insane. Arkansas and Australia.
As long as we're doing housekeeping, It occurs to me I would like to check up on the share price of my favorite publicly traded company, the Odyssey Marine Exploration Company.
Going on? Still above water.
Our listeners can remember that I was lucky enough to get in when shares were about $16 per share.
Sounds like a good job.
Yeah, good deal. Let's see. Closed today at 48 cents per share.
Right. So that's less.
How
buy low, sell.
How have they? You're better versed in these things than I. How are they not delisted by now? They've been under $1 for a while now. Like, don't you get kicked off this?
This is not an SEC sanctioned podcast. So I don't want to opine specifically on rules and rule sets. You know what I mean?
I mean, I appreciate your caution.
I don't want to get us in trouble. You're the lawyer. You'd end up having to defend us.
Well, I wish that I had gotten the benefit of some insider trading on this thing, because I feel like there's some people who got rich, but I was not one of them.
Yeah, you went the opposite way.
So anything else we need to wrap up before we get into
I don't think so.
3?
I think, Dr. Troy, just to set the stage here, this is your episode. Last time we did the Antwerp diamond heist, which was a phenomenal heist, a very poor cover-up or poor execution in the getaway, but an interesting story. Today, you're going to tell us about a crime. No one knows what it is. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. That was a great episode. The last episode on the Diamond Heist, that was kind of a classic of the genre. Today's genre, we're going to move into a different genre. This is the unsolved homicide is how I'm going to go ahead and put it.
This is serious.
Okay, let's get started. Let's go through this logically. We're going to start with the scene of the crime. How does that sound?
Exciting, I would say. I'm nervous. Yes, go.
Okay, the scene of the crime is a lake called Center Hill Lake. It's in central Tennessee, or as they say down in that state, Middle Tennessee.
Middle Tennessee. All right, so we're in the South? We're at Center Hill Lake.
We're at Center Hill Lake. It's about an hour and a half east of Nashville by car.
Hour and a half? Okay, so a little further than a commute, but near Nashville.
Well, in California, that's like
nothing.
The
that's
average commute.
Yeah. Right, exactly. You're only going 2 miles, but it will take you the same amount of time as what it takes to get from Center Hill Lake into Nashville.
Now, I say lake, we all picture a lake. It's really a man-made reservoir.
Wait a second. Is that false advertising? Can they get in trouble for that? You can't call yourself a lake if you're, a backyard plastic pool.
This is one of those reservoirs that was created during the World War II era when they were looking for major public projects to increase generation of power for the defense industry.
So this is an Army Corps of Engineer type of project.
Exactly.
Well, then I'm all for it, and I take back everything I said. I love this lake. This is a good job, guys. And thank you for your service.
Have you ever seen the TV show Ozark?
Yes, love it. Love it.
So picture like that show is based in Missouri on the so-called Lake of the Ozarks.
Okay.
But just the look of it is similar to the look of this one that we're talking about. It's just this one in Tennessee is smaller, but it's not like a round lake. It's more of like, there's twists and turns and some parts are narrow and it's all surrounded by trees. And so that's what we're talking about.
Is it a vacation destination? Like the Lake of the Ozarks, like that seemed like it was more vacation oriented.
Thank you very much for asking. It's mostly a pretty rural, undeveloped area, but in recent years, supposedly there has been an increase in the construction of vacation homes.
Okay.
Now, one of the things that the so-called Center Hill Lake is best known for in Tennessee is every summer they have a festival there called Wake Fest.
Okay.
Okay, this is a competition and exhibition for some of the best wakeboarders from Tennessee and beyond.
Oh, so the lake is suited for that type of activity.
Apparently.
Yeah, it's like wide enough and all that.
Yeah, they got different age groups and different event categories. They got cash prizes. It's a whole thing.
Was that part of the original Army Corps of Engineers planning documentation? Wakeboarding requires, you know what I mean? Like specification one.
Yeah, they needed everybody to pitch in for the war effort, and wakeboarders were no exception. They wanted to make sure that they were part of the war effort. Now, Wakefest, the truth is the wakeboarding itself is only one small part of the draw. Really what it is, it's a weekend-long party, just a huge 3-week throngs of people, lots of drinking, that kind of thing.
I'm not judging.
And people sleep overnight so they hold it on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. People spend Friday night and Saturday night either on houseboats or in nearby cabins or in campsites all around the lake.
Right, but this is more wholesome in nature. We're not talking about a deliverance situation here at the lake for this Wake Fest. This seems like a lot of good people having a fun time and just kicking back.
Yes, except for our story today. So that's a great segue. Okay, so unfortunately, one of the people who attended Wakefest in 2015 was a young woman from Hendersonville, Tennessee, named Lauren Taylor Agee, and that's spelled Agee. Some of her friends call her Lauren, some of her friends call her Taylor, but we're going to go with Lauren for our story. Let me tell you a little bit about her. She was born in Biloxi, Mississippi, raised in Tennessee.
Okay.
Described as an extrovert, chatty, enthusiastic, and according to her family, full of sugar and a little spice.
Wow, sounds fun. Yeah, sounds like a nice person.
Very nice person. 21 years old when the events that we're going to describe took place. She was set to study, ironically enough, criminal justice.
Oh, no.
In her classes the next fall at the Volunteer State Community College in Gallatin, Tennessee. She loved music and dancing. In high school, she performed with the well-regarded Hendersonville High Golden Girls dance team.
Talented? Okay. Wow.
Talented. Music-wise, she was a big fan of the music of Drake.
Okay.
Possibly because she was the sort of enthusiastic, bubbly, sort of high-energy person. She did have a tattoo on her forearm, which reminded her to, and it's just one word, breathe.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. Meditative.
Family and friends said she loved animals. She liked watching TV with her mom, especially shows like CSI, Law and Order, NCIS, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so in July 2015, she wanted to attend Wakefest, but she wasn't sure who she would go with. Some of her first choice friends were unavailable or didn't want to go, so she wound up asking around and then deciding ultimately to attend with a young woman who she'd been friends with when they were young, but who she had sort of drifted apart from.
Okay.
And that woman's name is Hannah Palmer.
Hannah Palmer.
Already, when Lauren says to her mom, "Hey, Mom, I'm going to Wakefest, going with Hannah Palmer," her mother already has a little bit of concern. Or she said, honey, you haven't really, like, you guys were friends a long time ago, but you barely know her, like, now, And then when Hannah shows up to pick up Lauren for the drive out to Center Hill Lake, the mother's level of concern increases because she walks out front with Lauren, and Hannah is behind the wheel, but she doesn't even look up to say hello, to Lauren's mom or wave or do any of the sort of things that like a parent kind of expects. Like, hey,
right.
Hey, Ms. Smith, good to see you, whatever. So her mom is just feeling anxious, and, maybe she's just an anxious mom, but she says, come back, give me an extra hug. And so Lauren gives her a big hug, and they say goodbye. So they hit the road. They set out for Center Hill Lake on Friday, July 24th, 2015. Once they get to the lake, they meet up with two people that they're going to stay at a campsite with. Okay. So these are the two more key characters in the story. One is Hannah Palmer's new boyfriend, a motorcycle riding daredevil named Aaron Lilly.
Okay.
And then a friend of his named Chris Stout. So that's the four people. Okay. There's actually one other guy named Brix Gambrel, but he's not central to our story. So we're going to skip over him. Let's talk about the campsite itself, like that right, where they're going to stay in the woods. In a word, it's every parent's nightmare. It's on the top of a steep bluff looking down on the lake. At its highest point, it's 90 feet above the water. Oof. And there's a video that the girls take as they're on their way across the lake in a canoe, and they're just recording it, they're talking about whatever, and they're looking up at the campsite, and Hannah, not Lauren, but Hannah, her friend, says, joking around, but she says, we're going into a death trap. Ugh. Okay, there's a tent at this campsite at the top of the hill. There's also a hammock, and the hammock is suspended from two trees, which are like right at the very edge of the cliff.
Who put the hammock there?
Well, Aaron,
it's a joke.
Aaron and this guy Brix are the ones who set up the camp. First night, first day, everything goes great. It's classic Wakefest. You know the drill. A lot of boats, canoes, kayaks, lots of drinking. Sure, there's lots of vomiting, hangovers. All that stuff. At one point, one of Lauren's friends from back in Hendersonville arranges to stop by and see the campsite. Lauren has left him a message or sent him a text. His name's LD, and she says, "You got to see this campsite. It's like crazy. It's at the top of this cliff, whatever. So LD says, sure, no problem. I'll stop.
Lizzie's husband's name is LD.
Really?
Yes.
I don't think it's the same one.
No.
We'll find out. I'm about to play a tape of him talking, so you'll be able to tell whether that's Lizzie.
I'm just saying if we need to get like verification of whereabouts, like we might be able to ask Lizzie where LD was. Whatever.
So LD and a few of his friends stop by the clifftop campsite, and just like Lauren's mother, this guy, LD, gets a bad feeling right away.
Uh-oh.
For one thing, he does not like this kid, Aaron Lilly, who set up the camp. Knows him from back in Hendersonville. He's never liked him. They share a mutual friend, this girl named Cassie, that Aaron Lilly has been accused at one point of beating up. So this kid, LD, does not like Aaron Lilly.
I don't blame him.
Doesn't know that he was the one who set up the tent, or rather the campsite. So he's up there, looking around, everything's cool. And then Aaron Lilly steps out of the tent, and this guy's like, anyway, so I'm going to play a little clip of LD. This is the thing that he remembered afterward that creeped him out. Here we go.
Okay.
Whenever we were up there was a statement made that freaked me out even more. It was out of nowhere, out of the blue, and I don't know what it was said. And it was said by Aaron. And he stated that if anything was to ever happen up here, then it stays up here. That nobody's gonna say anything. And like me and my buddies were just like, why don't he just say that? I don't know. It came out of nowhere. We didn't know why he said it, and like nobody else said anything. It was just he just came out and just said that, and it was freaky.
Not good.
Not good unless this is like a cover up where you're trying to pin it on him. And so you're going to say that he said all these ominous,
That's a good point. I was going to say, if this were a TV show, actually, Aaron would not be the one who did it because it's looking so obviously like, you know what I mean? Okay, so then that's on Saturday that LD stops by. Long day on the water Saturday. Again, they're in the sun, a lot of drinking. There's a festival takes place at a marina called Pates Ford Marina. There's a bar and grill there called Fish Lips.
Okay, not a super appetizing name, but okay.
That's where a lot of the music, drinking, dancing, whatever, socializing takes place at the bar. It gets late. It's time to go back to the scary campsite at the top of the cliff.
Who gets the hammock tonight?
Well, great. You're again, perfect segue. Who does get the hammock tonight? At least for that night. All four people, it appears, were drinking, maybe quite heavily.
Next to the cliff. What happens up here stays up here. Unless you fall, then you're down there. We're still up here. And
by all accounts, Lauren, our protagonist, spent at least part of the night in the hammock with the kid named Chris Stout. Aaron Lilly's friend, Chris Stout. Now, how two people sleep in a hammock is beyond me. It does not seem logistically sound. Even if you're drunk and you want to fool around with somebody, it just sounds like the wrong setup.
Especially when you're on the side of a cliff.
Well, not only that, like my experience of hammocks, it would be very smushed and kind of claustrophobic if you were two people in one.
Yeah, I'm not a big hammock guy. Like, I feel like my feet get stuck in the ropes. I can't get out.
It's not like, because there's different kinds of hammocks. This looks more like the kind that like encloses you. It's not like the flat type that you see like at a picnic site where it's near the ground and it's mostly flat. This is more like the one that kind of, anyway. But now we got to skip ahead to Sunday. And unfortunately, the next characters in our story are two fishermen.
Okay.
They are fishing on Sunday afternoon in a quiet cove on sort of the other side of the bluff. One part of the bluff faces toward the marina and all the action, and then more on the back of the bluff, if you look over that side, there's a quiet, somewhat isolated cove. So two fishermen take their boat in there. They're, fishing for whatever you fish for there, maybe bass or catfish. They get deep enough in the cove, they think they see a body in the water.
Oh boy.
They maneuver closer and they see, yeah, it's definitely a body. And not only is it a body, it's like past the point where anything could be done for the body. Like, the dad, I think it's a dad and a son, and the dad is like, should we go? And the son, I forget if he's a EMS guy or something. He says, he's like, Dad, we shouldn't touch it. That person is passed away, and we're not, we should leave everything exactly the way it is and go get the cops. So that's what they do. They go and they get the authorities, and it is indeed a dead person, and super extra unfortunately, it turns out to be Lauren Agee. Okay, so
so depressing. Yeah.
horrible. So the big question is, did she drown? Did she fall off the cliff? Was she pushed off the cliff? Or was she possibly killed on land and then put in the water to make it look like a drowning?
But are they able to tell what caused the death? Like if she had fallen off a cliff, like she'd have certain injuries that suggest that's what killed her.
Great question.
Well, I'm not a detective, but yeah.
I mean, it feels like in another world, if you had been graded more fairly.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, you got to test the blood alcohol. You got to find out like what could have happened, right? If a fall was involved.
Yeah, you're going to go back and listen to this episode and realize how many things you're saying in advance that are just right on the money.
Well, maybe I've watched or listened to too much true crime, but go on.
To sort of orient us, it's hard to know for sure exactly how she died, because one of the most notable features of this case is how unbelievably sloppy and insufficient the sheriff's investigation was. As you know, I used to work as a crime reporter as a young man.
Yes, you did. In several different parts of the country.
Thank you. Florida, California, Maine,
yes.
All over the place.
Yeah.
Okay. And my point is, a lot of times when you start out at a newspaper, or just even in that career, you kind of start out in the boondocks. You know what I mean? Like, you don't just get the cushy job
New York City,
Tampa. You got to go live in Brooksville, or you got to live in Victorville, California, or wherever.
Right.
Okay. I say this merely as a preface to give my own impression of law enforcement in some of these like smaller rural areas. Okay.
Right.
There's some amazing cops, some really good ones, some good people, but you do run into some exceptionally like poorly trained and unqualified police officers at some of these smaller agencies. That is what happens in a nutshell in the Lauren Agee case. Now, if the crime had occurred just over the line in White County, Tennessee, no problem. There was an off-duty deputy from White County who was the head of security at Wakefest, and that guy was at the scene pretty early on. And even though it was outside of his jurisdiction, he was already noticing things that didn't add up. And he, the three kids from that campsite who were still alive, he thought they were acting sketchy as hell.
Oh, stays on the mountain, all that kind of thing.
So exactly. And but unfortunately, that's not the guy. This guy, Chris Yardchuck, the head of security, because the death occurred not in White County, but DeKalb. I don't know how you say it. DeKalb County. I feel like they have DeKalb counties in
every state. Yeah, exactly. Okay. I know. There's definitely DeKalb County, Georgia.
There's a Georgia.
And there's DeKalb, Illinois.
Yeah.
So there's a lot.
Yeah. Okay. But anyway,
Springfield, every state has a Springfield.
So the agency is the sheriff's office from that county. And more specifically, it's a deputy named Jeremy Taylor, who unfortunately had never run a death investigation before.
Okay.
And there was a lot he did not know. He didn't know that, for instance, you have to ask specifically for things like a rape kit to be done at the hospital or during the autopsy. You have to order that. And he did not realize that. He thought they just did that. It seems like within about a half hour, he has bought hook, line, and sinker the story that Aaron Lilly is selling, which is, hey, I don't know, man, we were all drinking. She must have got up in the middle of the night to pee, and she must have fallen off, must have fallen off the cliff.
But like, wouldn't you have screamed? Like people would hear, like if you were...
They were all very drunk. I mean, the guy that she was in the hammock with just dimly remembers her getting up, but doesn't remember much else.
Okay.
And also, I don't know if somebody did fall in the darkness 90 feet down onto rocks below, would you even hear much?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know.
So this Jeremy Taylor, he quickly decides, okay, this is looking like an accidental fall. And in doing so, he appears to have disregarded the explicit feedback he had gotten from this off-duty cop who said, listen, the three friends are acting weird. Okay. He says, look, I was head of security. None of them reported her missing. They're trying to claim now that they were looking for her all day, but none of them came and reported her missing.
What?
And he said, the other thing that was weird to Yardchuck is when the fishermen come over and they tell the security at the festival, hey, there's a body in the water. This guy Yarchuk comes over in a boat and he notices Aaron, Lily, and Chris Stout. He doesn't, he just sees them in a canoe waiting by a houseboat, and they're looking into the cove where the body is. And it's not till his own boat, the law officer's boat, starts to get close that he says these guys start canoeing toward him, yelling, "Is that our friend? She's missing. We've been looking for her. Is that our friend?"
Whoa.
And he said it just seemed staged.
Wow.
He said on
Let
the
me
way
ask you
out
a
there.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so in terms of the topography, so you're saying let's just go with the theory that she fell out of the hammock or she stumbled and fell over the cliff.
Yeah.
She was found kind of like around the bend. Is there a
around
current?
the bend?
Like how? Why
There's
would
two. Well, you could fall off like the side of the campsite that's facing more toward the marina and the action, or maybe she fell off. There's a lot of questioning around how would she have wound up in that cove back there, because it seems like the only way that you could fall off and fall straight into water, you would have fell out in front of the campsite. You wouldn't have fallen into that cove behind the campsite.
There's no current, so like her body wouldn't have just drifted to the cove.
Yeah. So the family. Yeah, exactly. So the family who.
I'm not an expert on currents, by the way. But this is an enclosed man-made lake. Like, there's not going to be any kind of like force that's going to take her from, if she fell off a cliff, to some other remote cove. Like, someone deliberately must have put her there.
That's certainly what the family of this poor woman believes, that was what happened.
All right. Well, but Dr. Shore, before you tell us what actually happened, and I'm hoping you're going to have a resolution here, because someone's got to pay for this awful crime.
Okay.
Let's hear from our sponsor, and then we'll get whatever information you're willing to provide or can provide on the other side.
Did you arrange to have a sponsor that has to do with the waterways?
Unbelievable.
You knew that? Yeah. Last year in Florida, there were 659 boating accidents and 59 fatalities. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission believes that safe boating is a choice and boating education is critical. Also, if you were born on or after January 1st, 1988, you must complete an approved boater safety course in order to operate a boat legally in the state. Visit myfwc.com for details. Make the choice to boat safely. Lives depend on it. Okay, so another off-duty cop who was working security at the festival, also from White County, was a guy named Ryan Melanson.
Okay.
He said, spending time with Chris and Aaron, I could definitely tell something was wrong there. The way Aaron kept saying, "Let me do the talking" to Chris, just their demeanor, no remorse. They didn't seem sad by the loss of their friend, just scared. They had the wrong body language for the situation.
Oof.
To both Melanson and the other off-duty deputy, it appeared that Aaron Lilly several times gestured or made facial expressions toward his friend Chris Stout, telling him basically to keep his mouth shut.
Oh my God. Okay.
And old Chris Stout, the one from the hammock, for his part, makes a truly bizarre comment to a law officer who's waiting with him on a boat while other parts of the investigation are happening. And the cop sees Chris Stout sort of zone out and kind of like is staring at the cop's gun. And the cop says, "Hey, buddy, you all right? What you thinking about?" And Chris Stout, according to this cop, Stout says, "I'm just wondering how I can get that gun off your hip and get off this boat."
What?
And the
Totally normal response.
And the officer says, "Buddy, you better not. That wouldn't end the way you wanted it to." But just not something you say like an hour after the woman that you were in a hammock with last night has been found dead.
Oh my God.
You talk about wanting to get the gun off the cop's hip and get off the boat.
Oh.
Okay, adding to suspicion, and this is the one that gets me. I just can't get over this. None of those three people, even her childhood friend Hannah Palmer, none of those three people, once they got back to Hendersonville, attended Lauren's funeral several days later. Can you believe
Wait,
that.
what? Why? That doesn't make
They
any sense.
they later, when they were called on it, they said, well, we had gotten, word from back channels that maybe her family didn't want us there. The family said that's absolutely not true, and it was truly bizarre that they did not show up.
Wow. I mean, that seems very telling.
Okay, how about this? Our buddy Chris Stout, the one who was fantasizing about grabbing the cop's gun, again, several hours after the body's been discovered, he does what people his age do, gets on social media. And he posts on, I don't know if it's Instagram, but he posts some photos of Wakefest. He captions it with "best weekend ever."
When was this posted?
Hours after the body's discovered.
Okay, I'm not Henry Poirot or whatever that guy is.
That guy.
But I mean,
Hercule.
what?
Yeah.
Are you
Now,
being serious?
he did later delete the post, I'm sure.
Yeah, okay, but hold on. He posted best weekend ever right after finding out that his friend who was in the hammock with died.
Yeah.
So put the cuffs on this guy. Like, what? This is ridiculous.
The other huge, obvious lead that doesn't get flagged or doesn't, change the way Deputy Taylor approaches the investigation is, one of the most basic things they do in a situation like this is run the criminal records on all the people that are nearby.
Right.
And on their witnesses.
Yeah.
This guy, Aaron Lilly, had a criminal record, and specifically, he had a past arrest for domestic violence. According to his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Franks, who also is friends with that kid, LD, that came up to the campsite. Anyway, his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Franks, said that Aaron had been violent with her on multiple occasions and had left her with numerous injuries, including bite marks and bruising to the face and neck. Franks also said that during sex, Lily liked to grab her by the neck and choke her.
Oh my God. So not good people. Like, this seems pretty obvious.
One thing that seems obvious to me is it seems sort of like law enforcement 101. Okay, you got 3 kids there. One of them's seems to be acting like a ringleader in the sense that he's telling other people, keep their mouths shut, I'll do the talking. And he's the same one who has a past arrest for domestic violence. Law enforcement 101 would be interview each of these kids separately, and you got to work them against each other. You got to tell the girl, Hannah Palmer, and the boy, Chris Stout, listen, I don't think you probably had anything to do with this. I think this is probably more about Aaron, but you're going to have to tell us everything you know right now, or you're going to be looking at accessory or whatever.
Right. I mean, even, again, the fact of where she was found, to me, suggests instantaneously, those kids did something. Like, that's just... that happened. I mean,
and also just the way they're clamming up and acting
and
weird.
Then add all that other stuff.
Yeah, not attending the funeral. Okay, but you asked me, you rightly said, okay, well, Kit, let's get down to brass tacks. What were the injuries?
Autopsy.
So they do the autopsy. The autopsy shows blunt force injuries to the head and body, especially the back of the head. There's like a little bit of water in her lungs. They say drowning could be a contributing cause, but they don't think it's basically a drowning. They think that the injury to the head and also one vertebra was broken. They said that's basically what we're looking at. Is it was the blunt force trauma to the body. There's also some wounds on the back of her shoulders. And there's some bruising and cuts to the back of one hand.
Okay.
There's also this part is disputed. When the Lauren's family, clearly was not satisfied with the results of this investigation, and they hired their own experts they later try to prosecute a wrongful death case against these other 3 kids. So in doing that, they get all their own experts, and their experts independently review the autopsy findings and the autopsy diagram and everything. According to them, there's also is evidence of some strangulation in the neck tissues, as well as bruising between the legs on the inner thighs. Thing that immediately jumps out to me is you've got this ex-girlfriend who says during sex he likes to choke, and then you've got this body that has some signs of strangulation on the neck. Further, bruising on the inside of the legs sounds like a possible sexual assault. And then also the cuts and bruises on the back of one hand, according to the family's expert, he says that looks like possibly somebody whose hand is being pinned down against the ground. And further, they suggested the wounds to the shoulders in sort of a symmetrical pattern on just both like the shoulder blades. They say those look like possible dragging injuries, that the body is being dragged across the ground prior to being placed in the water. What they really wish, what the family really wishes they had was the rape kit. No rape kit was no rape kit was ever done. The deputy in charge of the investigation did not order one. Also, no scrapings were taken from underneath her fingernails. Another just law enforcement 101. Nor did the deputies search the rocks at the base of the cliff to find any evidence for a fall, either blood or clothing or personal items or anything like that. The deputy, when he was deposed by the family in the wrongful death case, said, "Why wouldn't you have searched the rocks at the base of the cliff?" And he said, basically, needle in a haystack. I had no idea where off the cliff she had fallen, so I would have been there days looking at all the different...
They'll start by looking directly below the hammock, right? And then just spread out 10 feet from there. Like, we're not asking you to go through the tri-state area. Like, what? Not that big of a spit, is it? Like,
there's the private investigator that the family hired is this woman, Sheila Wysocki. She's amazing. She's done a podcast. Anybody who wants more information about this case, because I'm giving you, the all-in-one episode version, but
that's great.
She's done a whole bunch of episodes, and one whole episode is just this poor bastard, Jeremy Taylor, being deposed, that deputy. It's one of the most, I'm sure for the family, Lauren's family, it's infuriating. I think the guy just clearly decided right off the bat, look, it's accidental, so why would I have been asking for things like a rape kit, or why would I have been running criminal record checks on people? Like, it looked pretty clearly, you've seen the campsite, it looks dangerous. My finding was that it was an accidental fall, and that's about it. Now, after the funeral and some of that stuff, Aaron Lilly does a couple of things which arguably would help him insulate himself further from any legal jeopardy or contacts with law enforcement. For one thing, he quickly marries Hannah Palmer, who he had not even been dating very long.
Whoa.
And this may have been to bring into play the so-called marital privilege, which protects people from having to testify against a spouse in court.
Clearly.
The other thing he does is they immediately move out of state. They move to Florida. And again, arguably, this makes it harder for law enforcement to contact them or continue the investigation.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I'm curious about, and I understand there hasn't been enough evidence to bring charges or whatever the reason is why no one's been held responsible. But to me, there's enough circumstantial evidence that don't people get convicted on things even though there's not the DNA or the guts? Like, this is very odd behavior. Like, you got to believe in so many coincidences.
Yeah. Now, one thing that you also brought up ahead of time, which was correct, was like, okay, well, what's the blood alcohol level? Lauren's blood alcohol level in the autopsy is about twice the legal limit. So I don't know what it is there. In a lot of states it's 0.08. So that'd be a 0.16. She'd been drinking for sure. Probably all were blowing a 0.16 that night. Also, I don't know if it came into play in this case. Sometimes, depending on how long a body has been dead for, just the natural process is still happening in the body can affect blood alcohol. Like, they can even raise the level a little bit. I don't know how that all works.
I can ask you a potentially disturbing question?
Sure.
With this cliff area where they were staying,
yeah,
did they test, like, just what if throw a body across, like a dummy,
fantastic
over the edge, and like, does it really end up in the cove within 10 hours?
Fantastic. The cops did not do that. The experts who were hired by the family did do that. They did a comprehensive series of tests, and they said, first of all, we're having a hard time making a dummy land in the water, period. But second of all, the only place where it conceivably could happen is not on the side where the cove is. That cove in back, that's not where there's no way you could get a dummy that falls off the cliff and lands in the water back there off that cove.
Right. It just seems so obvious based on their behavior alone. Who posts something like that after a friend has been tragically killed?
Yeah, best weekend ever. Okay, for those of our listeners who do social media, and if they do Instagram, you can catch up with our suspect number one, Aaron Lilly. He is on Instagram under the address @sitdown_surfer. And the reason he is a sit-down surfer is that apparently at some point after all these events happened, he really was a motorcycle daredevil. There are plenty of photos of him, popping wheelies on a motorcycle. At some point he has a bad accident and he is rendered paralyzed from the waist down.
Oh,
so
my God.
nowadays, if he does go wakeboarding or surfing, it's with the help of others and he's sitting down.
Right.
But I encourage people to go check out. At first
I thought you were going to say like Instagram, check out our Instagram. And I'm like, do I have to set up an Instagram for KMA Podcast?
No, I'm asking people to do primary research and look at our suspect. So he got married. He and his wife had a baby, a daughter, and he and Hannah had a daughter. And then he got paralyzed. Now, part of why I suggest you go and check out his Instagram is it just kind of gives you an idea of who this guy is. There are a ton of photos of boats and cars and occasionally a picture of him like wakeboarding, sitting down, wakeboarding.
Yeah.
Not a lot of pictures of the wife or the daughter. This guy is, I believe the acronym is POS, and that's not point of sale. The whole thing is extremely sad and very frustrating.
So depressing that no one's held accountable, because it just seems, again, like, come on, it's so obvious.
The mom in particular has tried to keep the story alive and has tried to tell her story wherever she can, and she still hopes for the day when, even if somebody isn't found criminally liable, she just at least gets the story of what happened.
Unbelievable. So there's no resolution.
There's no resolution. They're still trying to get the story out there. She died almost 10 years ago. Parents still have no idea what happened. Here are the two ways I could imagine.
Like, what's your intuition? What do you think actually happened?
My guess is that Aaron Lilly did try to have sex with her or did start to do that. And maybe the other thing I didn't mention about the campsite is there's sort of a higher level and a lower level. There's one part where you can jump down about 8 or 9 feet to get down to the lower level. There was some evidence in the autopsy of a little bit of compression in the spine. Now, that could either be from a big drop or even just from a drop of 10 feet. In my mind, I feel like maybe she was running away from somebody and just jumped that 8 feet. And, I don't know. I feel like she got hit in the back of the head with a rock or something like that. And then my guess is she probably was dragged in the water. But I'm not an expert and I don't have the power to file charges.
But don't you believe because of where she was found that they put her there?
Yeah. Okay. So she was dragged into the water. Yeah, is my guess.
But not just dragged into the water, dragged like on some craft to a specific spot in the water.
Yeah, and then kind of hanging out nearby during the following day, and then when cops get there, they rush over there and say, "Hey, we've been searching all day. Is that our friend?
Yeah,
is that our friend?"
That's just so suspicious.
Yeah, the only two ways that I could conceive of maybe the story coming out, if and I don't know what the state of their marriage is, if that couple ever did split up, Hannah and Aaron, a lot of times, especially if there's an acrimonious split in a marriage, then some stuff comes out. And sure enough, in the wrongful death lawsuit, which the family ended up dropping because it was just taking forever and it was going back and forth between appellate courts and district court, it was costing a lot of money and it was stressing out the family. But Hannah Palmer, Aaron Lilly's wife, did just cite the Fifth Amendment throughout. I don't want to incriminate myself. The other way, I guess I could see that the other kid that was there, Chris Stout, the dude that was in the hammock, he has racked up, it looks like multiple DUIs. I could imagine a situation where at some point, if that kid was looking at any kind of prison time for something, that is also a time when sometimes they'll say, hey, could I trade this information I have about an earlier case in order to get a lighter sentence on this current case? So I could imagine that scenario.
Those are pretty extreme scenarios. Like, we got to hope for two things, like one of two things to happen.
Yeah.
Acrimonious divorce and some resentment there, or this guy ends up in major trouble and is willing to, I don't know.
To rat out.
Yeah, it seems like unlikely.
If somebody asks, okay, well, what should this county where this took place, what should they have done? I mean, they don't have like, Matlock on their staff. They don't have like some, seasoned homicide detective or something on their staff. A typical thing which a small agency will do is it's not unusual for them to either ask for help from the state police or even just to turn over a case to the state police. And in this case, Tennessee, it's called the TBI, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. Clearly what should have happened here.
But again, like he thought it was an accident. So would he have turned something over if you believe it's an accident?
No.
Right.
I'm just saying
that would have worked.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't have worked. But I'm just saying, that's another thing that they didn't do that they should have considered doing. So you add that to the list of should have done a rape kit, didn't do it. Should have asked for scraping under the fingernails, didn't do it.
Right.
In fact, Jeremy Taylor, he doesn't even secure the campsite scene. He doesn't even tape off the campsite scene because
it's dangerous to do that though. When you're taping it up like on the edge, like I don't know, like I'd be nervous.
Yeah, and I still have a question. Maybe one of our listeners will know the answer to this. I had written previously about this case.
Yes, in your blog. I feel like I've read about this in your blog.
Yeah, and I got a nice email back from from Lauren's sister, a nice woman named Allison, and so we stayed in touch a little bit through the years. And one of the questions I asked her was Lauren cremated, and it sounds like she wasn't. And my thing is like it seems like maybe you would still be able to get DNA from underneath the fingernails.
Interesting. I don't know.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I think my sense is that like Allison, the sister, had to live with this tragedy for 10 years and has her own life she needs to live and her own family, whereas maybe the mom is the one who's still, the mom is named Sherry Smith, and she is somebody for whom this is still front and center even 10 years later, and really wants to, if there's any way, get to the bottom of it to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. It's such a horrible tragedy, but even with the mishaps of the investigation, they didn't do this, they didn't do that. To me, the circumstantial evidence right now, if you were to put this in front of a jury, it seems pretty clear that they know this is nefarious. It wasn't an accident.
And, when the wrongful death lawsuit is filed and when all the depositions start to happen of not just the sheriff's deputy, but his boss, the sheriff, it really becomes apparent, how shockingly incomplete or inept the investigation was. But again, this is something I recognize from sort of small town police departments sometimes, is they build this narrative of, hey, the media is just trying to create a story. The media is trying to sensationalize something to sell newspapers, and we're not going to reopen this case because there's no new evidence. Like the state police are not going to come in and take over this case without being invited to do it. So it's still that same sheriff's department and it's still the same district attorney's office. And in a small place like that, there's sort of, in my experience, tends to be a siege mentality. Once there starts to be negative press, it's rarely is the response to be like, yeah, you know what? If we did make mistakes, we want to find out what they were. We want to open this up, invite another agency. And that's never what happens. Instead, you get the fiery, long press conference from the sheriff saying, scolding the reporters like, you guys are just trying to sell newspapers and stir stuff up. And there's no new evidence here to reopen it. So I hear what you're saying. I just don't think there's a realistic chance that that's ever going to get reopened unless there's some bombshell revelation.
My point is like, if you were to ask 4 teenagers or 5 teenagers and say, okay, you guys are all friends. Imagine you go camping together for a weekend. One of you falls off the cliff and dies. Do you think any of you would go home as if nothing happened and then post that it was the best weekend of your life? Like, it's just,
and then
that alone seems
not show up for the freaking funeral.
But what I'm saying is, you can keep building from there, obviously, but stop there. Like, I went camping with friends, a girl I'm friends with who I was in a hammock with, she tragically died. Best weekend ever. Like, to me, that's a tragedy that scars you for life. And this guy's over it within 3 hours. Like, that doesn't add up.
Yeah. Agreed. You're preaching to the choir.
Why do we have to go through all these hoops? Like, clearly something's off here. No one does that.
Yeah. So the name of the podcast that woman, Sheila Wysocki, did is called Without Warning, and you skip all the way back.
Was that a paid promotion, or are you just doing that out of the kindness of KMA's heart?
Maybe. No, because I want to point out, if you listen to literally just one out of the 20 different episodes she does on the topic, if you just listen to the deposition of either the sheriff's deputy or the sheriff himself, it's your blood will start to boil within 5 minutes.
God.
Just as a parent, that was why I said, looking at that campsite, it's like exactly what in your mind you worry about. If your kid says, "Oh, I'm going to go out to this lake, it's a wake fest, we're going to camp in the woods," it's exactly what everything you're worried about. Like, it's an unsafe campsite. They're going to be drinking too much. They're going to be on the water. She doesn't know the kids that she's camping with very well. My heart goes out to that family. It goes out to the mom. What a shame that it wasn't investigated properly. And what a shame that I don't know for sure what exactly happened. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was an accident. Even if it was an accident, it does not excuse the responsibility of the other 3 kids. And it's just so uncanny that he, the day before that happens to a group of, 6 or 7 people
mountain,
says, yeah, if anything ever were to happen up here, it stays up here. It's just,
again, it's like, how many more breadcrumbs do you need to know something untoward happened?
But like I said, if it was a TV show, it wouldn't be that guy. It would be somebody else.
Yeah, but in real life, it's always that guy. Like, you just have to add a twist in TV.
You have to add a twist in TV. And here's my other thing that I got from, small time police reporting. If there's an unsolved homicide, one pretty good back of the envelope way to start is like, hey, have you interviewed any witnesses today who've previously been either accused of murder or accused of beating the shit out of somebody? Because I wrote about several cases where, the case was unsolved for years. And it's like, okay, well, it turned out it was a guy from a block away who it turned out also had a previous arrest for murder that he was acquitted for. So it's like, that is a pretty basic thing. You don't need to add in the twist for TV a lot of times. It's like, okay, there's a violent guy in the neighborhood. Or in a lot of cases, it's the spouse or the loved one or something like that.
But you know how those campsites are. Like, people aren't all fast asleep at the exact same. It's one of those things. So you would have known if she accidentally fell in the middle of the night. I don't know. There would have been noise.
Something is definitely off.
Definitely frustrating, because you want resolution and you want people to be held responsible. And in this case, it feels like there are some people that are responsible.
I mean, my thing is like, even if you didn't kill her yourself, you have a responsibility to her parents to tell them, not just the parents, to her siblings, to explain what happened and at least give them that peace of mind or some kind of closure. But anyway, I wanted to put it on our radar because I do live with the hope that at some point something does break loose, and this is a story that we'll get to come back to and say, hey, you remember episode 3, season 4? We have an update on that. So that would be great. Speaking of episode 4, what is there going to be a teasing situation here?
No, not a teasing situation. There's a couple crimes that I am dancing around, very different from each other. So no official tease today.
Now, you say what kind of dance are you dancing? Is it a tango or more,
it's more of a
like
two-step? It's more of
Texas
an
two-step?
Yeah, it's not like modern dance. Let's not paint a picture that our audience would not appreciate. But Dr. that was a fascinating and somewhat haunting tale, because there were too many people involved for like someone not to crack.
Yeah, and it's true crime. It's not going to all be sunshine and roses this season, but there's no partner I'd rather have in this journey.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the way you presented the facts. There was no, we definitely have our opinions, and those, are born from the fact that it seems pretty obvious something's going on here. But good to highlight, and again, you never know what's going to shake loose and what's going to happen in the future. Certainly hope we get to revisit this one. But excellent episode.
Thank you. Excellent questions.
All right, very good. So let's play our outro music. We'll be back. We're not going to take as long of a break. We took a pretty long break, but that's okay.
We did, but now, as you say, we're not only cooking, we're cooking with gas.
That is correct. And on that note, we'll see you on the next episode, episode 4.
Sounds good.
Well, that's that sat in your apartment many times when we were working on a case, but never known as much as I do now, and yet felt as helpless. Can't do a thing. Haven't got a case.
No alibi is perfect, mon brave. He must be punished.
Yeah, but how? Morrow, I tell you, the DA wouldn't even take the case to court.